Hello everyone, it's me Arden Lee. I am back today with another video, and today's video is going to address the question of what do you do if there is someone in your life who is causing toxic situations and behaving in ways that violate your boundaries, and yet you're having trouble cutting them off because you still feel emotional attachment to them. What do you do if there's someone that you really love and care about, but they're behaving in ways that are unacceptable to you and your standards? What do you do about that kind of a situation? We're going to talk about that today. But of course, before we get into that topic, as always, if you have not yet done so already, I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel and or like my page, depending on which platform you are viewing this video on. And if you're not yet familiar with me and my work, my name is Arden Lee, and I am the creator of the Repatterning Project. And that is an 8-week course in belief hacking, intention setting, using our language and our intentions, and bringing conscious awareness to our everyday choices and habits in order to better empower ourselves to create our realities so we can construct a life where we achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves, where we can create happiness, abundance, personal relationships that are fulfilling to us, and careers that we love and enjoy, right? All the fun things that we are here on this planet to explore and to play in. So come join us if that sounds like your thing. You can find a link in the description box to a free PDF guide about the Repatterning Project. You can also find a link to the Repatterning Parlor, which is the free Facebook group that I moderate, full of like-minded individuals who are looking to come together and support each other on this path toward happiness and success. So as you know, having supportive people around you who not only believe in you, but also believe in themselves and believe that everyone can be successful together if they all come together to support one another and share those same beliefs is crucial in moving forward on your path, right? Having supportive people around you who can help enforce the beliefs that are helping you. So do come and join us and absolutely take advantage of that resource. Come and say hi, make a little welcome post, and let us know how you found us. We would love to welcome you into the fold. All right, so let's talk about what do you do if there's someone in your life that you still have emotional attachment to, and yet you're having trouble drawing boundaries with them. I've noticed that there seems to be a bit of a theme. There seems to be a bit of a theme in the questions that come up. And this video is another video that has been inspired by a question that came up in the group, in the Repatterning Parlor. And I've noticed that there's a lot of questions this week about how to draw boundaries. And, it really, for me at this point, it comes down to a macro issue of a flip in consciousness, because there's plenty of advice that I could give in a video like this on exactly the kind of words to use. Nonviolent communication, NVC, Marshall Rosenberg. We could talk about how to phrase something in a way that is kind and compassionate and allows someone the opportunity to change or what have you. We could talk about these specific tactics. But what I find really works the best for me is to adopt really an overhaul in my entire philosophy in how I deal with friendships and relationships and how I deal with my boundaries and standards. Because ultimately, we have to believe that we deserve to have boundaries and we deserve to have standards, and that the people that we let into our lives, the people that we choose to surround ourselves with, we want to help them treat us well. Because when we've been conditioned to be people pleasers, and so many of us have, we get conditioned to bend backwards, to contort ourselves into pretzels, to prioritize other people's needs first, to make sure that other people are comfortable. And we may meet and get into relationships with people who, whenever we have a boundary, whenever we have an issue with the way that they might be behaving in our lives, that they get defensive and they turn it around on us, and they start to make it unsafe. They start to make it feel unsafe for us to speak up about our needs, right? And we can start to feel over time like speaking up and letting someone know that they're hurting us is scary, and that it's going to result in rejection, and that it's going to result in conflict, not even a good kind of conflict, but the conflict that we are so often so strongly conditioned to avoid. And we end up just making ourselves smaller and smaller and compromising and compromising. And we fall into these patterns where we think, well, I'll just be nicer and then maybe they'll treat me better. And that actually never works. Or if you meet someone it does work with, I don't know, tell me. Here's what's really damaging about that, in my opinion. And it took me a long time to really turn things around and come to this realization. So I want to share this with you in the hopes that you can adopt it faster than I did, but with the understanding that it may take you a while to get there. Because it took me a while to get there too. So I spent the majority of my relationships in my 20s, for example, as someone who identified with a submissive orientation. I was in the BDSM scene, and I was like, I'm submissive. I like to be obedient. I like to not have to make decisions. I like to hand that over to another person. And at the same time, I was also like kind of weirdly a control freak about the experiences too. So I would craft experiences that were designed to be pleasing to people, in which I could be in control as the giver, which allowed me to avoid the vulnerability of receiving, and yet somehow still be still be the person who is playing small in the relationship by ignoring my own needs and crafting everything to cater to the needs of the other person, right? And after a while, I realized that some of the people I was dating were not better off for having dated me, despite everything that I did for them, despite, serving them or catering to them or doing things that that I felt would be helpful for them and their goals or what have you. What I found after a while was I zoomed back and I was like, wow, I'm actually enabling these men in their avoidance of responsibility for their own lives. They're making bad decisions and I'm going along with them because I've given them the power to make decisions. And there may be some times that I speak up and I talk about, how I feel about it, but ultimately I never put my foot down and said this isn't okay and I can't stick around if you're going to do this. And some of my relationships involved like full-on businesses getting shut down by the NYPD Vice Squad. So when I talk about making decisions that have long-range effects, I'm not just talking about like where we go for dinner. These were serious red flags that I saw and that I spoke up about and voiced an opinion about, but I was ignored. And I chose to stay in the paradigm of the relationship and continue to enable my partner instead of doing the right thing, which would have been to leave and say, no, this is really not okay. I'm not okay with you doing this to me and putting me in this kind of danger. I'm also really not okay with you doing it to yourself, but I can't control your free will. All I can do is I can say I'm not going to be a part of it. That if this is something you're choosing to do, I'm not going to stick around and endorse this. And you have to understand that by tolerating people's behavior, by not setting a boundary and setting a standard and walking away, despite our emotional attachment to people, we are we are endorsing their poor behavior, and it really doesn't serve them. So I want you to start coming at this from a place of a greater love, right? What I mean by that is that if you really love someone and you really, really care about them, you're not going to enable them to harm you or to harm themselves. If you really, I know I made another video about this, but I think the title is, if you're in love with someone, you don't enable their harmful behavior, right? You don't enable them to harm themselves. You don't enable them to harm you. You don't enable them to harm other people. And if that means stepping out of their lives and saying, I can't endorse this while you're doing it, then so be it. We tend to think of cutting people out of our lives in these really binary terms. We tend to think that, it's all black or all white, all good or all bad or whatever. We outrage culture has made us, into cancellation junkies, right? A person's canceled. They did this thing and now they're canceled. Now they're out of my life. I would really like for us to move on to that from that paradigm, because I understand where it's coming from. It's a reaction to people getting away with so much toxic behavior for such a long time that we now are finally calling out. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to set a standard instead that just says you must be this tall to ride. If you are not this tall, it's not personal, but I'm not going to let you do the thing that you're doing. So come back when you're this tall. About a year and a half ago, I was involved in a spiritual circle, and I was groped in my sleep by the man who was leading it. I had consented to sharing a bed platonically. I was wearing pajamas, right? Just like full on, not even like sexy ones, and he groped me in my sleep. And the first time it happened, I was like, well, he's probably just asleep, and he probably, just thinks I'm someone else or whatever. And I kind of ignored it because I was like, you know what, whatever. But when it happened a second time, I was like, okay, this is a pattern. This is a problem. And it wasn't even that it was that big of a deal for me to experience being groped, because let's face it, I've had many, many, many far worse sexual assaults happen to me in my lifetime. So it wasn't that big of a deal to experience. But I knew that I needed to tell this person what he was doing, because I didn't want to enable what was essentially him touching me in a way that I couldn't consent to, because I was asleep when it was happening. I woke up obviously, but when it happened, and I believe he was probably asleep too. I don't think he meant to hurt me necessarily, or at the very least, I'm willing to believe that. But I needed to let him know what he was doing, and it really sucked because he responded in a way that was really terrible. I sat him down and I was like, hey, so this happened. I feel really nervous about telling you this because I'm very conflict avoidant, but this is going on. This is what you did. I believe you if you say that you didn't mean it, but you need to really look at drawing stronger boundaries around sharing a bed with someone. If this is something that you do, like, you need to warn them first. Like, if you have sexsomnia is a thing, but then you need to like tell someone and make sure that you're getting their informed consent before they share a bed. And maybe there's a way to have like stronger boundaries in this community, especially because you're a leader. Maybe you want to look at some of your own stuff and hear like, I bought him a copy of The Body Keeps the Score. Like, I was trying to be so kind in saying like, you can't do this. I love you, but you can't do this. And he got super defensive with me. He criticized the way that I had approached him, the timing with which I had approached him. He said he did not consent to having that discussion with me. And he proceeded to gaslight me to the rest of the community and tell everyone that I was making it up because I wanted to date him. Which is pretty funny when you think about it, because I wrote an entire book called The New Rules of Attraction on what I do when I want to date someone, and accusing them of sexual assault when they haven't done it is nowhere in that playbook. I don't think he even thought that was true. I think it was even just like the first thing to reach for. And this person is no longer in my life because I care about him and I love him very much, and I really feel on a soul level that that he's, like soul family, but I'm not going to let him do that. And I'm not going to, if he's going to be an asshole, I love him too much to allow him to do that while I just stand by and watch, right? Because what's inevitably going to happen is if I don't speak up and say something, if I don't draw a boundary and say, you're not allowed to act this way, this is bad, And therefore, if I were to stay in his life and be like, okay, well, I guess you're right, also I want to come to your free spiritual circles that you're running, like I want to still be a part of that community. I lost my whole church, bro. Like, I lost my whole spiritual community. One of the most beautiful places that I'd ever been, where I'd experienced, such ecstatic connection with the divine. And I was like, I'll find it somewhere else, because I don't care. You could offer me the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's not worth me going outside of my integrity and enabling someone I love to treat me badly, right? Now, if he comes back and he says, wow, Arden, I'm so grateful that you walked away from that, and I really sat and I thought about it, and you're right, and I'm so sorry about the way I reacted, and here's why what I did was wrong, and here's what I've done to implement changes, I'd be like, amazing, welcome back. Thank you. That's all I wanted, Because you must be this tall to ride this ride. And if you're not tall enough to ride the ride right now, it's not personal. It's that you need to be that tall. If you come back and you're that tall, then great. But I want to really invite you into understanding that your emotional attachment to someone is not serving them if it's enabling them to treat you poorly, or anyone poorly, or themselves poorly. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're feeling for someone, if you're prioritizing your own sense of selfishness of having them in your lives, if you're prioritizing your own desire to have that person in your life over actually helping that person be in their integrity and act in their own best interest and everyone's best interest, then that is just an emotional attachment, And you've got to be strong enough to say, whatever I was able to get from you, I can get elsewhere without having to pay this great price for it. And, in my situation, that was not only a friendship with a soul brother who meant a great deal to me, but also like an entire church. But what was I going to church for in the first place? What was I learning these spiritual lessons for? If I got to that point and just decided to ignore the shadow and sweep everything under the rug, like, why am I there? What am I doing if I'm going to these spiritual circles and yet telling spirit with my actions that I haven't learned the lesson? So honestly, I could sit here and tell you how to like draw a boundary and what kind of stuff to say, and here's a script or a formula. But at the end of the day, the thing that's really going to help you most is to know that the best way to love someone is to hold them to their standards of their own integrity by being in your integrity with how you allow people to treat you. And if you can do that, and you can really say, hey man, it's not personal, but I can't be around you so long as you're doing this. I love you. I'll see you when you get your shit together. Then that's really going to be the key, far more than any script, far more than any tactic or linguistic technique. And y'all know how I love my linguistic techniques, but really coming into that knowledge for yourself, that there is no emotional attachment that is worth sacrificing your integrity for. And that's really what it is. And you'll be doing that person a favor. And when they come back and when they realize that you were acting out of love for them all along, should they one day decide to get their shit together, then they'll be really grateful to you, and your friendship or relationship will be deeper than ever. But you've got to be able to put your foot down to actually see change. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going in those same cycles, and nothing is going to change. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. We'll see you next time.